I didn't grow up thinking this is where I'd end up. Nobody does. When I was a kid, I thought I'd be something normal, maybe a mechanic like my uncle, or a delivery driver, or even just a guy with a steady paycheck and a small apartment. Nothing fancy, just enough to get by. But life doesn't always care about your plans. By the time I was 24, I was broke, unemployed, and sleeping on a friend's couch in a cramped apartment in Phoenix, the kind of place where the air conditioner barely worked and the fridge was always half empty. My friend Jake never said anything, but I knew I was overstaying my welcome. "Man, you got any leads yet?" he asked one night, leaning against the kitchen counter with a beer in his hand. I shook my head. "Applied everywhere. Nobody's calling back." "You try warehouses?" "Yeah." "Fast food?" "Yeah." "Construction?" "Yeah, Jake, all of it." He sighed and took a sip. "You can't just sit around forever, bro." "I know," I muttered, and I did know. That was the worst part. I had no degree, no real skills. I'd bounced between random jobs since high school, gas stations, stock rooms, a short stint at a car wash. Nothing stuck, nothing I could turn into a career. And now, nothing was hiring me. A week later, Jake told me his cousin was coming to stay. That was my cue. "I'll figure something out," I said, even though I had no idea how. I started sleeping in my car, a beat-up Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a back seat that smelled like old fries and regret. I parked in different spots every night, Walmart lots, quiet streets, sometimes near a 24-hour gym just so I could use the bathroom. During the day, I walked around with my phone, refreshing job listings like it would magically change something. It didn't. I remember the exact moment things shifted. It was a Thursday afternoon, hot as hell. I was sitting in my car, sweating through my shirt, scrolling mindlessly. My bank account had $12.43 in it. $12. That's when I saw it. An ad. Not on some shady website, just a normal-looking listing buried between job posts. Looking for discreet male companion, generous compensation, no experience required. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. "Yeah, right," I muttered. "That's not real." But I didn't scroll past it. I clicked. It led to a simple page, no flashy design, just a phone number and a short description. Something about it felt real, or maybe I just wanted it to be real. I locked my phone and tossed it onto the passenger seat. "No way," I said out loud, but the words didn't feel convincing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the ad. No experience required. Generous compensation. How much was generous? $100? $200? That was more money than I'd seen in weeks. I tried to push the thought away. "This is stupid," I told myself. "You're not doing that." But another voice answered back. "You're sleeping in your car." I sat up in the driver's seat, rubbing my face. "This isn't me." "Then what is you?" that voice asked. "Because whatever you've been doing isn't working." That one hit hard. The next morning, I stared at my phone for 10 straight minutes before finally dialing the number. My hand was shaking. It rang twice. Then a woman answered. "Hello?" Her voice was calm, professional. I almost hung up. Hi. I'm calling about the ad." There was a brief pause. "Which one?" she asked. "The male companion one." Another pause. Then, "Do you have any experience?" "No." "That's fine," she said, like she'd heard that 1,000 times. "We can work with that. What's your name?" I hesitated. "Ethan. Not my real name." "All right, Ethan," she said. "We'll need to meet in person first. Make sure you're suitable." "Suitable?" I repeated. "For our clients." Clients. That word made it real in a way nothing else had. My stomach tightened. "Where?" I asked. She gave me an address, a hotel downtown. "Come tomorrow at noon and dress presentable." Then she hung up. I didn't tell anyone, not that there was anyone to tell. The next day, I borrowed a clean shirt from a laundromat lost and found bin, shaved in a gas station bathroom, and tried to make myself look like someone who had his life together. The hotel was way nicer than anything I'd ever stepped foot in. Marble floors, cold air conditioning, people in suits walking around like they belonged there. I felt like a fraud the second I walked in. I almost turned around, but then I thought about my bank account. $12, and I kept walking. She was sitting in the lobby, mid-40s maybe, sharp eyes, perfect posture, the kind of woman who looked like she could read you in seconds. "Ethan?" she asked as I approached. "Yeah." She stood and looked me up and down, not in a creepy way, more like she was evaluating me. "Come with me." We went up to a room. My heart was pounding the whole time. Once inside, she gestured for me to sit. "Relax," she said. "This isn't what you think." I wasn't sure I believed that. She sat across from me. "Let's be clear. This is a service. Clients pay for companionship, conversation, discretion." "And other stuff?" I asked quietly. She held my gaze. "If they request it, yes, but nothing happens without your consent." I nodded slowly. "How much?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Your first booking would be around $500. I thought I misheard her. 500? For a few hours. My head spun. That was more money than I'd made in a week at any job I'd ever had. "You'd get a percentage, of course, but it's still substantial." I leaned back in the chair. $500 for a few hours. It felt unreal. "This isn't permanent," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "Many men do this short term, get back on their feet." Short term. That sounded safe, temporary, like something I could control. "So," she said, folding her hands, "are you interested?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about everything. My empty bank account, my car, the constant stress, the feeling of being stuck. Then I thought about $500 for a few hours. I swallowed. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I am." She smiled slightly. "Good," she said. "We'll start you tomorrow." That night I sat in my car staring at the steering wheel. "What are you doing?" I whispered to myself. I didn't have a good answer, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about how I was going to survive the next day. I already knew, and that scared me more than anything. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed the same question over and over again. What are you about to do? By morning, I felt like I hadn't rested at all. My body was tired, but my head was wide awake, buzzing with nerves. I checked my phone. One new message. It was from her. "Be ready by 2 p.m. I'll send the location. Client is respectful. First time will be easy." Easy. I stared at that word longer than I should have. Nothing about this felt easy. I spent the next few hours killing time, walked around a mall without buying anything, sat in the food court pretending I wasn't counting every dollar in my pocket. At 1:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again. An address, a high-rise apartment building downtown. I swallowed hard. "This is it," I said to myself. "No backing out now." The building was even nicer than the hotel from yesterday. Glass doors, doorman, everything clean and polished. I almost turned around again. But then I remembered something simple. $500. That number kept pushing me forward. I walked in. The doorman barely glanced at me, just pointed me toward the elevator after I gave him the apartment number. The ride up felt longer than it probably was. Each floor made my chest tighter. Ding! I stepped out onto a quiet hallway, soft carpet, no noise, no distractions, just me and a single door at the end. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at it. Just knock, I muttered. So I did. The door opened after a moment. A man stood there, late 30s, maybe early 40s, well-dressed, calm, the kind of guy who looked like he had everything figured out. "Ethan?" he asked. "Yeah." He stepped aside. "Come in." I walked in slowly, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. The apartment was unreal. Big windows, expensive furniture, everything spotless. "You want something to drink?" he asked, casually, like this was a normal visit. Water's fine." He handed me a glass and gestured toward the couch. "Relax," he said. "You look like you're about to run." I forced a small laugh. "First time." "Yeah," he said, nodding. "I figured." There was no judgment in his voice. That surprised me. We sat there for a bit, just talking. Simple stuff. Where I was from, what I used to do, what I planned to do next. I didn't tell him everything, but I didn't lie much either. "Rough spot, huh?" he said, after a while. "Yeah." He nodded like he understood. "I've been there. Not like this, but broke is broke." That made something in my chest loosen a little. For a moment, it didn't feel as strange. Just two people talking. But eventually, the silence came. The kind that says things are about to change. My heart started pounding again. He stood up slowly. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to, just so we're clear." I nodded. "Okay." I won't go into details, not because I can't, but because the truth is the details don't matter as much as how it felt. And it felt strange, not terrifying like I expected, not even as awkward as I imagined, just disconnected, like I wasn't fully there, like I was watching myself from the outside, doing something I never thought I would. And the whole time, one thought kept repeating in my head: this is just temporary. A few hours later, it was over, just like that. He handed me an envelope. "Take care of yourself," he said. I nodded, not really knowing what to say. "Thanks." Then I left. I didn't open the envelope until I got back to my car. My hands were shaking again as I peeled it open. Cash. A lot of it. I counted it twice just to be sure. $400. My cut. $400. I leaned back in the driver's seat and stared at the money. "This is insane," I whispered. In one afternoon, I made more than I used to make in a week. Maybe more. My first reaction wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about how I was going to eat that night. That feeling didn't last as long as I thought it would. By the time the sun went down, something else started creeping in. A weird emptiness. I sat in my car, the envelope still in my hand. "What did you just do?" I asked myself. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I just didn't want to say it out loud. My phone buzzed again. Another message from her. "Good job today. Client was satisfied. I have another booking tomorrow if you're available." I stared at the screen. Tomorrow? Already? I should have said no. I should have taken the money, figured something else out, and walked away. But then I looked at the money again. $400. And I thought about how easy it had been. Not emotionally, not mentally, but physically, it was simple. And the money? That part was very real. "Yeah," I typed back. "I'm available." I hit send before I could change my mind. The next few days blurred together. Different places, different clients. Some were like the first, calm, respectful, easy to talk to. Others were quieter, more distant. But none of them were what I feared the most. No one forced anything. No one crossed the line I wasn't willing to cross. And every time I walked away with more money than I knew what to do with. I got a cheap motel room, then a better one. Then, after a couple of weeks, a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No more sleeping in the car. No more counting coins for food. On the outside, my life was getting better, fast, but inside, something felt off. I started noticing it late at night, when everything was quiet, when I wasn't distracted. I'd sit there staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this really better? I had money, stability, a roof over my head, but I also had this feeling I couldn't shake, like I was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize. One night after another booking, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked the same face, same eyes, but something about it felt different. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. No answer, just silence. My phone buzzed again. Another message, another client, another few $100s. I stared at it for a long time. Then I sighed. "Just a little longer," I said to myself. "Just until you're stable." That was the deal I kept making, over and over again. And each time it got easier to say yes. At some point, it stopped feeling temporary. That's the part nobody warns you about. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no big moment where you suddenly realize you've crossed a line you can't come back from. It's slower than that, quieter. One day turns into a week turns into a month, and before you know it, the thing you told yourself was just for now becomes your normal. 3 months in, my life looked completely different. I had a decent apartment, nothing crazy, but clean, quiet, and mine. I had money in my bank account, more than I'd ever had before. I could walk into a store and buy what I needed without checking the price first. On paper, I was doing better than ever. But inside, that was a different story. It started with little things. I stopped calling people. Not that I had many to call, but still. Jake texted me once, "Yo, you alive?" I stared at the message for a while before replying, "Yeah, just busy." That became my default answer, busy. It was easier than explaining anything, easier than lying, easier than telling the truth. The truth was, I didn't know how to explain my life anymore. What was I supposed to say? "Hey man, I'm doing great. I pay my rent by pretending to be someone else for strangers." Yeah, that wasn't exactly an easy conversation. So I kept it to myself. All of it. The work itself got easier. That was the scary part. Not because it became enjoyable, but because I got used to it. I learned how to act, what to say, how to read people quickly. I figured out what clients wanted before they even said it. I became good at it. And every time I realized that, it bothered me more than I expected. "Why are you good at this?" I asked myself one night. I didn't have an answer I liked. The money kept coming, and with it came a new kind of problem. I didn't know when to stop. Every time I thought about quitting, I'd do the math. Just one more week. That's another 1,000. Just one more month. That's security. There was always a reason to keep going, always something to justify it. Then one night changed everything. It started like any other booking. Same routine. New client, nice place, easy conversation. At first, nothing felt different. He was polite, a little quieter than most, but not rude. We talked for a while. Then at some point, he asked me a question I wasn't ready for. "Do you ever think about what this is doing to you?" I froze. No one had ever asked me that before. "Not really," I said, trying to brush it off. He didn't smile. "You should." I felt something tighten in my chest. "It's just work," I said. He shook his head slightly. "No," he said, "it's not." That stuck with me, more than it should have. The rest of the time I wasn't fully there. My mind kept replaying his words, "What this is doing to you." After I left, I didn't go home. I drove around for hours. No music, no destination. Just driving, thinking. I pulled into an empty parking lot sometime after midnight and just sat there, my hands resting on the steering wheel. Same position I used to sit in when I was broke, back when my biggest problem was having no money. Now I had money, and somehow things felt heavier. "What are you doing?" I asked myself again. But this time the question hit harder, because now I knew the answer, and I didn't like it. I thought about who I used to be. Not perfect, not successful, but simpler. I had problems, sure, but I didn't feel like this. I didn't feel disconnected from myself. "I said this was temporary," I whispered. The words felt hollow now, because deep down I knew the truth. I had stopped treating it like something temporary a long time ago. My phone buzzed. Another message. Another booking. Another easy few $100s. I looked at the screen, then I locked it. For the first time since I started, I didn't reply. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment and just sat on the edge of the bed. No rush, no schedule, no client waiting. Just silence. It felt strange, but also calm. I checked my bank account. Still plenty of money, enough to last a while if I was careful. That thought gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. A choice. I picked up my phone, scrolled to her number, hesitated, then I called. She answered quickly. "Ethan, I was just about to message you." "I'm done," I said. Silence. "Done?" she repeated. "Yeah." Another pause. "Sure?" she asked. "You're doing very well." I let out a small breath. "I know." "And the money?" "I know," I cut in gently. "But I'm done." She didn't argue, didn't try to convince me. "All right," she said finally. "If you change your mind, I won't." Another pause. Then, "Take care of yourself, Ethan. You too." And just like that, it was over. The days after that were weird. I didn't suddenly feel better. There was no big moment of relief or happiness. If anything, I felt lost again. But it was a different kind of lost. Not desperate, not trapped, just uncertain. I started applying for jobs again, same as before. Warehouses, stores, anything. This time I wasn't doing it from a place of panic. I had time, and that made a difference. A couple weeks later, I got a job at a small auto repair shop. Nothing glamorous. Oil changes, tire rotations, basic stuff. The pay wasn't great, not even close to what I was making before. But when I got my first paycheck, something felt different. It was smaller, but it felt clean. One afternoon, while wiping grease off my hands, my coworker asked, "So what were you doing before this?" I paused, thought about it, then shrugged. "Just trying to get by," I said. He nodded like that made perfect sense, because it did. That night, I sat in my apartment, same place, same walls, but I felt more like myself than I had in months. I wasn't proud of everything I'd done, but I understood it. I knew why I made those choices. I knew what it felt like to have no options, or at least to think you had none. The truth is simple. I needed money. I had no marketable skills, so I sold what I could. But that's not the whole story, because in the end, I also learned just as important. Just because something solves your problems doesn't mean it's creating new ones.